Okay, Grandma, tell us the story of the owl.
Okay, this took place on what we call the Aladdin Ranch. This was north of Colville, which was north of Spokane. We were right up in the northeast corner of Washington, almost on the Canadian border. And this particular incident happened during the winter time, and we'd had a really a large amount of snow. All of our trails going up to the chicken coop, out to the woodshed, out to the barn, anywhere we needed to go. We had to make a trail because the snow was so deep. So one morning before we got ready to go into Colville to go to school, I was going up to feed the chickens and let them out in their run, make sure their water didn't have ice on it. And I started up the trail, and I would say the snow was probably up to my thighs. Thank goodness I had a heavy coat with a hood on, I had gloves on, because as I was making my way up the trail, something jumped on my back. Or I didn't know if it jumped on my back, ran into me, whatever it was, it almost knocked me down. So I was throwing my arms up, trying to knock it off of my back, finally got it off of my back, and then I just hopped out into the deeper snow and headed back to the house and told my dad what had happened, and he told me that he would take care of the chickens, not to worry about it, get ready to get on the school bus because we were heading into town. And then the next morning he said he would also take care of the chickens for me. That night when we got back from school, he said we wouldn't have to worry about it. It was a big white snow owl, and he said it was good size, and probably was looking for food, mice or something, and with all the snow just wasn't able to find food. So anyway, that took care of the owl, but he said he had seen it that day grab a barn cat, which I was sad about because apparently it was hungry.
Okay, Grandma, now tell me the story of the cat.
Okay, this was in kind of the summertime, and Jean and I were just kind of playing, making games and things, and there was a building just north of our house, not very far, but it was a 2-room cabin type thing, and you could get back inside of that from one end, run out all through the rooms out onto a kind of a wide porch that was a little bit off the ground, maybe 3 feet off the ground. And so we would race through that building, seeing who could get to the edge and jump the furthest, like we were doing a high jump type thing. And so one day we were doing that, and we jumped, and lo and behold, I lit right on one of our cats and killed it dead on the doornail. It just went, meow, and that was the end of it. And I just started to cry. I thought, oh my gosh, and Jean said it's just a barn cat. But anyway, I killed that cat.
Okay, can you tell me the story of the cat?
This was a calf from one of our milk cows. After they were a little bit big and weaned from their moms, we would feed them with a bucket that had a nipple. You would just put milk in the bucket, and then they could suck on this nipple, and this was the way they got their milk. So this was a daily chore. We had to take care of these baby calves. There was probably 3 or 4 or so of them, and I was feeding one of them, just holding the bucket, and we had a little willow switch that we just tapped the calves on the top of the head to keep them from butting the one away that was trying to feed. And so as I was feeding this one little baby calf, another one come up, was trying to push it out of the way so it could get the milk. I tapped it on the head. It went blah and fell to its knees and died. And I was so sad. I'm killing cats, I'm killing calves. And my dad was in the barn milking the milk cows and ran in and told him, and he come out, took one look at it and just picked it up and finished killing it. Cut its throat. Is that gross? And said, well, you didn't do it on purpose. There's nothing we can do about it now. But I was so sad. So I thought it might be a good thing to talk a little bit about going to church. And this was the case in most of the areas that we lived in. Dad was really, and Mother were really wanting us to attend church. So we could drive, and sometimes, like going from the ranch into Colville was a 25-mile ride. So we would actually hold our meetings back to back, like they do nowadays, instead of going back for sacrament meeting, like they started out, and then holding Sunday school in the morning. So we would just hold the meetings back to back. And then in some areas that we lived in, and this was kind of during the Second World War, gas was rationed and money was hard to come by. So a lot of times we did not have the gas or the means to go to church. So my dad would talk with the district president, who was like a stake president, and ask if we could hold Sunday school. And he would get permission to hold Sunday school, and back then they would have the sacrament during Sunday school as well as sacrament meeting. So we were able to have the sacrament. Mother and Dad would teach us, and sometimes there were other families in the area, particularly in Dishman, Spokane area, that would come, and we'd hold church at our house. So I just thought it was important that you know that this was important to my parents, that we were able to go to church as much as we could.
How did you meet Grandpa, and what did you like about him?
I will kind of have a little preview on this, I think. I want to kind of back up, and some of these things, like I said before, are going to overlap. You're going to hear them more than once. But I broke my engagement to Blair Spears just before I graduated from high school in May of 1956. And I'm referring to my book I have here. And so in July, Glen Howard, who was from Holiday, Utah, came up to Washington to visit with an uncle who happened to live in our branch boundaries. So their family came to our branch for church. And Glen had grown up around these uncles. They were the ones that taught him to hunt and to fish and do that type of thing, because his dad wasn't a hunter or a fisherman until later on in life. So I met Grandpa at church. He came to church with this uncle, and we were introduced, and I thought he was really pretty nice looking, and just kind of felt drawn to him. The young men that we were dating or could date from high school, most of them were not members of the church, and this was really important to me, and I wanted to be married in the temple. So I just was happy to meet somebody who was active in the church, because the young man I had been engaged to was really not active in the church. So I met him at church and just felt really drawn to him, and then during the week we were having young men, young women, and he was there, and he taught a lesson, and I was impressed with him. He had not been home from his mission very long, and that was one of the reasons that he had come up to visit with his particular uncle. who had moved up to Washington while Glen was on his mission. So that's kind of how that all tied in together. But I had prayed really hard to meet someone who would be worthy to take me to the temple. And I basically said, Heavenly Father, if I'm going to marry somebody in the temple, I'm going to need some help here. I felt like all those circumstances of Uncle Lou moving to Washington, Glen coming to see him, meeting him at church, were really a tender mercy from our Heavenly Father.
How did you two get engaged?
I kind of hesitate to bring this up because it was a little quicker than you would normally want to do. Glen was going to be returning to Utah, and I really wanted to get to know him better, so I talked my mother and dad into having the family, his Uncle Lou's family and Glen, come out for dinner. So we were able to talk and visit more then. And he asked me out, asked me if I could go out to a movie. And I said, yes, that's fine. And he said, well, then how about the next night? Can we do something the next night? And I thought, wow. But he said, I have a question for you first. And I said, okay. And he said, I want to know about the young man who's hanging around you at church a lot. And this was actually Jean's brother-in-law, who had come up to work for the summer up in that area. He lived in Spokane. And so we were friends, and I had gone out with him a couple times, but I just didn't feel anything for this young man other than he was just a nice friend. He actually asked me if I'd get engaged to him, and I said, no, I'm not going to get engaged. And I was planning on going on a mission over to Montana, where my uncle was district president, and they were sending their 18-year-olds out on missions just in that district. And I was going to go do that when I met Glen Howard. So back to the first date that we went out on, we went to a movie. He brought me home. We were sitting in the driveway talking, and he said, what temple are we going to get married in? And I said, Salt Lake. And so when I tell my kids and grandkids this story, it's kind of a little bit scary because we hadn't known each other for more than a few weeks when this happened.
When did you two get married?
So he had actually been drafted in the military, and I just kind of remembered that. So when he went back to Salt Lake, he was actually going to be heading to Fort Ord, California for basic training. And so we decided, he said, what I'll do is find out when I can get my first leave and come back to Salt Lake. And so since we wanted to be married in the Salt Lake Temple, my family would have to drive me down there. So to answer your question, it was about 4.5 months later that he got his first leave. My brother Ed and his wife drove me, mother and dad, down to Salt Lake City, and we got married.
What was your wedding like?
I thought it was really nice, and this is due in part, or I should say a lot, to Glen's mom, Elna Howard. She had planned a reception. We just didn't do those types of things, but she had planned a reception and really helped us get through all the details of that. And I'm going to actually stop right here, Caleb, and just say, when Glen got back to Salt Lake City and told his parents that he'd gotten engaged, they were a little shocked because, especially his dad, liked one of the girls that Glen had been dating and wanted Glen to marry her. And Glen basically just said, Dad, if you want to marry her, but I don't want to marry her. So they got in the car. After Glen went into basic training, they got in the car and drove up to meet me. They wanted to know who their son was planning on marrying. So our honeymoon actually was getting Glen back to Fort Ord. We did drive to Washington and had a little open house there in the building where we held our church. And then we left from there and drove down to Fort Ord, California, and were there for 6 weeks. And then we drove back home for Christmas. Glen left me there because he had to go back to Fort Ord and they were shipping out for Germany. So that was kind of sad to be married for 6 weeks and then just have him have to leave. But our plan was, once he got over there, he would check to see when they could, or if they could, have the wives come. Their duty over there was to guard one of the passes that Russia would come through into Germany. And so, obviously, there could be a situation where they didn't want the military men bringing their wives over. So I worked for 6 weeks or so. Elna, who was my mother-in-law, helped me find a job in Salt Lake City. And I worked for 6 weeks. And when they hired me, I told them that if I was given permission to go to Germany to be with my husband, I would. And I had no idea exactly when that would be. But they still went ahead and hired me. And I worked there until Glen finally said that I could come. So how I got over there was I sold the car that he had, and that paid my trip to Germany. And I went by bus from Salt Lake City to New York City. And one of the other guys that was with Glen in his unit, his wife came down to Salt Lake City from Washington State, and we met and we rode the bus back together, which was good because I had never done any of this. I was really a little hick from the sticks. I had not really done a lot. But we got back to New York and figured everything out, got on the ship that was called the United States. Took us 6 days to get to Germany. And fortunately for us, Glen and this girl's husband was able to meet us in Bremerhaven, which is northern Germany. And then from there we rode the train back down to Bamberg, where Glen was stationed. The other couple actually had to go to a different town. But I thought, I wonder if I could have figured out how to have ridden that train all by myself through Germany. Thank goodness I didn't have to. And we were there. I was there for a year. Grandpa was there a year and a half. But I had to leave because I was pregnant. And they would not fly me home after 5 months being pregnant.
So what makes your spouse or grandpa special and unique?
I just really liked the fact that he was very motivated. He had it all planned out. Once he got through with the 2 years in the military, he would be back in school. He had already done a couple of years before his mission. He, I guess you could say he knew where he was going and where he wanted to go. And he had a really fun sense of humor and just drew people to him, and he loved people. It did not matter who you were. An example of this would be his own family, his aunts and uncles, and even his mom and dad were inactive in the church. And his parents became more active when Glen decided to go on a mission. And he said it was a good bishop and some good friends that helped him make that decision to go on a mission. But his aunts and uncles knew that Glen loved him. It didn't matter if they smoked or even drank, didn't go to church. He loved them and they knew it. And he kind of, I'm trying to think of the word, he was not hypocritical. So that was something that I really liked about him.
We're down at Lake Powell. Jeff and I just arrived. Folks that are here haven't caught anything, but that's not atypical, they never do. But since we've come, the weather's exceptional. Of course, we planned it that way, so we'd have a good time. We're now in the process of preparing a turkey,
Dinner.
Like, deep fry.
This picture's getting blurry.
Turkey pit. We're going to cook the turkey, and the fire's been made, and we're getting ready to take care of that. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. How many children do you have? How did you decide what to name each of them? And what is your favorite story about each of your children?
So I have 5 children, and on deciding what to name them, I can say that with Jolene, that's the oldest, and she's our daughter, oldest daughter, but we were in Germany and I wanted to name her Heidi because I love that name. And Grandpa or Glen just said, absolutely not, I don't want Heidi. But we named Jolene. Joe be after Glen's dad's name was Joseph and was called Joe. And Lynn, we just thought went well with it. His sister was Carol Lynn, and it wasn't necessarily because we wanted her named after her, but we thought that was a good name to go along with Joe, to make it more feminine. So that's her name. There's so much I could say about her, and I want to mention here that in my history book, I do talk quite a bit about each of these children. So I'll just mention that she was very much loved. She was the first grandchild on Glen's side of the family. So she was pretty spoiled by her grandma and Grandpa Howard and 3 aunts. But she was really my right-hand man, so to speak. As she got older, she was good with the kids and took care of things at home because I was working for many years. So I say she is one of my very best friends. Joe was born on May 23rd, 1958 at Fairchild Air Force Base out of Spokane. I had come home from Germany and was staying with my parents. So she was born there at that Air Force Base. Steve was born May 8th, 1960 in Salt Lake City. He was just about 2 years exactly younger than his sister Jolene. And Glen was able to take me to the hospital to have Steve. And I say that because there were several of the other children that Glen was working, and his parents took me to the hospital to have the baby. So he was there and he was ecstatic about having a son, but it's not that he didn't love Jolene because she was his little doll or little princess. He did love her very much, but it seems like men want to have this son. So he was very happy. We were living in Sugar House, which is a suburb of Salt Lake City, and Glen was working on the police department. So I was always afraid that he might not be able to take me, but it happened that he was able to take me to the hospital. And Steve was just a fun, loving kid growing up and good with his siblings as well, and loved following his dad around when he was hunting and fishing. And he was my friend too, because I could talk with him and share my feelings with him as well as Joe. So Mike was born on November 5th, 1962 in Salt Lake City. And he was in a big hurry to get here, and Glen was working on the police department. And so I called Glen's parents. They only lived about a block away from where we lived at the time. And I said, my pains are starting. It probably won't be really soon, but just want to give you a heads up. And about 5 minutes later, I called back and said, you need to hurry. And so we called Glen, or got a message to him, and he said he'd send an ambulance or a police car, I guess, to escort us to the hospital, because we lived in Holiday at that time, which was a little further south in Salt Lake. But we, Glen's dad ended up going lickety-split. And we got to the hospital, and they just got me in there and said, whoops, the baby's almost here. So Mike came in a great big hurry, and he was a happy-go-lucky little guy, and just, he loved to just sit and play when he got a little bit older with blocks and tinker toys, just trying to build things. He's always loved that type of thing. And I can say that I feel like he's my friend too, because he has been one that I can talk to as well. I love that about him. Okay, then Jeff was born on January 28th, 1966 in Salt Lake City. Glen was working in Evanston, Wyoming at the time, in the social service department there at the Wyoming State Hospital as their one of their administrators. He was working at the hospital. Jeff decided he was going to make a grand entrance as well, coming several weeks early. And so again, I call Glen's parents, and they take me to the hospital, and third son was born. And he was just in a hurry to grow up. He started crawling really young. He started walking really young, and was so curious. I think out of all the kids, he just wanted to be into everything, just checking everything out. He just was, I had to always watch to make sure what Jeff was doing. He wasn't like Mike where he'd sit and play. He just was crawling around and getting into here, checking this out. So he was a little busy guy. But again, I feel like with Jeff that he has been my friend as well. You know, as they have grown up and become adults, they're also caring about what's going on in my life, and do I need help, and how can they help. And then Heather was born on July 4th, 1971 in Salt Lake City. She was about 2 weeks early as well, and Glen was again at work, but we were able to get a hold of him, and he was able to get to the hospital just before she was born, so he was there with me. So we call her our little firecracker, being born on the 4th of July, and I think for a long time she thought all the hoopla was for her birthday, which was kind of fun. And she was such a sweet little girl and wanted to do what was right all of the time. She really worried about doing something wrong. And the kids kind of teased her a little bit because sometimes they'd ask her a question and she had to think about it, and then she'd say, well, maybe I will and maybe I won't. I think she had to figure out, is it right or is it wrong? But she has become one of my best friends as well. And just appreciate her so much. And all these children are just blessings from heaven.
What is something funny or embarrassing one of your children said at an early age that you'll never forget?
Well, Heather may not appreciate this memory, but one year, Glen and I rented a houseboat and went down to Lake Powell. Took all of the kids. Joe was engaged to Curtis at that time, and he went with us. And on one of the days when it was kind of cool, I think everybody had been swimming and hiking around, and the weather cooled off, so they came back, and Joe and Kurt were sitting up on top of the top bunk bed on the houseboat. Steve and Mike and Jeff and Heather, and we were all right there together just talking. But Heather kind of looks up at Joe and Kurt. They're together under that blanket and said, you need to get out from under that blanket or you're going to have a baby. Something to that effect. Apparently she had just had some kind of a talk with mom or dad. I'm not sure why she brought that up, but we were just laughing our heads off. Sorry, Heather.
Talk to us.
What?
This is an X-rated movie.
Hi.
I am going to tell one about Jeff. So, coming back from the grocery store one time with Heather and Jeff in the car, maybe a couple of the other kids, I'm not sure. We were downtown Farmington, and Jeff was just poking Heather and just getting her crying. And I'd say, Jeff, you need to stop that. It just kept up. Just as we got on the north end of Farmington, I pulled the car over because I had said, I'm going to make you get out and walk if you don't quit that. So I pulled the car over and opened the door and told him to get out. He looked at me like, are you serious? And I got back in and I drove about not even a half a block. And he was kind of running behind, and I felt so bad. I think I traumatized him, but he quit poking Heather for a while.
What is the most memorable family vacation you took as a family?
I'm thinking back when we went to San Francisco. We took all of the kids. Joe was still home, and she had bought a car. And we couldn't get everybody in one car at that point. So she drove her car, and then we took Grandma Howard's, Elma Howard car, because it was a little bit bigger. And then we would switch people off riding in different cars. But going up over what we call Donner Pass, we hit a hailstorm, and it just put hail down really thick on the road, and cars were starting to slide all over the place. And I was sitting in the back seat of the bigger car, and Joe was following us in her car. I turned around and the car was sliding right towards us sideways. He lost control, and I said, Glen, and he glanced in his mirror, and he just held on tight, and the car kind of went past Joe. I was worried it was going to knock her off the road. It just clipped the bumper, and then it turned it and spun it around until it was headed going the opposite way in the wrong direction. Grandpa pulled off, and Joe pulled off after we got a little ways back further down the road. And we just felt like we had really been blessed because cars were just going every which way. But that trip was fun because we were able to go to Muir Woods. Glen and I had been to San Francisco quite a bit together when he had military duty there, and I'd go spend a few days with him. So we took the kids to all the fun places, down to the wharf, and just had a really fun trip together. But I want to just say here that we did a lot of fun trips, and most of them were camping because Glen was a camper. So we tended it a lot until we finally were able to buy a trailer. But there are many trips into Wyoming, to different lakes and different places that we went camping. Glen loved doing things with his family, and I did too.
How do you feel about raising your children? What was the best part, and what was the hardest part?
I always wanted to be a mom. In fact, I really never planned on working, but I was willing to work so that Glen could get through school. And that was the biggest reason I went to work. So when I did have to leave Jo when she was a baby, that was really, really hard. But Glen's mom tended her and took really good care of her. And then there were a few years I didn't have to work. In my patriarchal blessing, it says that I would be blessed with noble spirits for children, and I honestly feel that is true. Of course, they're not perfect, but they are just great people, and I love being their mom and getting to know them as individuals. Of course, it's hard being a parent when you have to discipline. But I can look back and see how I could have done things a lot differently. But I am grateful for the gospel in my life that kind of helped temper some of the ways that we tried to discipline our kids. And Grandpa, Glen, was really good to help teach me because I grew up in a pretty, in a home where my dad was very stern. So Grandpa just said, once you discipline your children, you need to show love and let them know that you love them, that it's what they did that you weren't happy with, not them. So I had some things to learn, and I appreciate Grandpa for helping teach me that, and also relying on the Spirit to help teach me. I love being a mom.
So what is the best thing about being a parent and being a grandparent?
The children, and the grandchildren, and the great-grandchildren, just spending time with them, and it's really fun at this point in my life to watch each of these individual families interact with each other, to watch them laugh and joke and tease and just have fun together. And then also care for each other. When something happens, they are right there wanting to help each other out. So that's, I think, the best thing for me is just being with my family. I'd rather do that than go on a big trip.
What do you think are your 3 best qualities? And follow that up with, what do you think are your 3 worst qualities?
I don't know if I'm going to come up with 3, but let me think. One would be that if somebody asks me to do something, I am going to do it and I'm going to follow up with it for the most part. There might be some things that get in the way of that, but I think I can be dependent upon if I'm asked to do something. I'm hoping one of my best qualities will be thought of as being faithful in the church. and trying to follow the things that we are taught to do. Am I perfect at it? No, I'm not. But I'm willing to keep trying, and hopefully through the help of my Heavenly Father, I can do better on that each day. I hope another good quality is that I love my family. And I am willing to do most anything for every one of them. And so on my worst qualities, probably one, and I don't know if it's a worst quality, but I don't like being late for things, so that bugs me. I'll use Grandpa as an example here, because when we'd get ready to go to church, I wanted to be there on time, and he was okay if we got there pretty close to the time. So I think it brought a little more peace into our home when we had two cars. I could go and get there when I wanted, and he'd come when he wanted. So I don't know if it's a bad quality, but it probably bugged, him, and maybe bugs other people sometimes. And I understand that there are situations and personalities that are different. And so I'm trying to think, what else would I say was a worse quality? Probably I'd ask you or one of my kids, what are my worst qualities?
I think you're a saint.
I'm not a saint.
What do you think you have the most of? Talent, intelligence, education, or persistence? And how has that helped you in your life?
Well, I'm going to say probably persistence. I probably have some talent. It's really hard for me to say that I have all these talents, but I guess I'm going to sum it up like this. I want some of every one of those, and I hope I do have some of every one of those. I'm hoping having common sense plays a part into this intelligent thing, because sometimes I've seen people who are so intelligent that they can't hardly function in life. But anyway, I just want some of all of those, but I would say persistence is probably one of my strong suits. I do have some education, so we'll just say I want some of all of them.
Do you have any special sayings or expressions?
You might better answer that, or some of the other kids, because sometimes I come up with things that are kind of off the wall, like Great Scott, or one I'm kind of laughing at, because every so often when something would happen, I'd say, for pity's sakes, and Glen would say, what does that mean? And I'll say, it means for pity's sakes. So I think I'm going to leave that to you guys to kind of share with each other, maybe when you watch this. What are some of the weird things or sayings that Grandma had?
What's your favorite book and why? And you can't say the Book of Mormon.
I can't say the Book of Mormon. Well, that's going to be on my list. But I read all different kinds of things. And I like to read Louis L'Amour. And it's, the Western type thing, but the fun thing about those books are that he is very historical. All the places that he writes about, he has been there, so he knows what he's talking about, so to speak. And he has some very profound sayings in his book. I like a good romance with a happy ending. And I like historical books, historical fiction. I just like a variety of things.
Who are 3 people in history that you admired most and why?
Well, I'm thinking of two right off the bat because I've just finished listening to books on tape about these. One is George Washington, and the other is Abraham Lincoln. I'm grateful to these two men for being close to Heavenly Father because He really did guide each of them in what they did as far as founding this nation. And I guess now I'm thinking about Joseph Smith. That's not the Book of Mormon, but Joseph Smith, and for all that he did in the restoration of the gospel.
Okay, what is one thing you've always wanted but still don't have?
Now that is a hard question because I feel like I have all that I need and all that I want. You know, I just cannot think of anything that is out there that I want. You know, if I could have Grandpa back, feeling good and healthy, then of course I want that. But I can't think of anything.
Do you feel any different about yourself now from how you felt when you were younger?
Yes, because it feels like you have lived multiple lives. When I think back when I was younger, growing up, yes, I feel like that I have lived a whole lot of different lives. I'm hoping I have gained wisdom and understanding and life helps teach us those things as we go along. But yes, as a child, I felt like I was way insecure. I mentioned before that I just kind of stayed back in the back of things. And then growing up, obviously, you're forced into doing things that you didn't think you would have to do, but then you grow from that. So yes, life is different in all these stages.
What is one thing that you think has stayed the same about you throughout your whole life, and what do you think's one thing that's changed?
I think the thing that maybe that has stayed the same is that I care for other people and their feelings. And I may not always show that, but I've always been concerned about people who have their feelings hurt and maybe don't have everything that they want. I think I've kind of hung on to that same feeling that I want to help people have and get things if I can that they're not able to have. I think I've learned to be more confident, although I would like more confidence, but I think I'm more confident and learned to be self-reliant. You know, with Grandpa being gone for almost 15 years, I've had to learn to be self-reliant. Although I'm going to refer back to my family. They have been so wonderful to help me through this.
You mentioned that you worked. Tell us a little bit about what you did for work.
Okay, I went to work, as I mentioned earlier, to help Grandpa get through school. And I worked for the telephone company. It was Mountain Bell when I started, and it's changed names, or the companies merged over the years. But I worked in the business office as a service representative, which basically was answering phones and helping people with all kinds of situations. I worked for almost 25 years for that company and stayed working that long because once we found that Grandpa had cancer, we had to have the insurance. We needed the insurance to help pay for so much of the medical.
Do you have any hobbies or special interests?
I do. I like to sew. I've tried to make quilts for weddings and for babies, and I enjoy doing that. I love working out in my yard most of the time. I've always liked being outside because I kind of followed my dad around. I was his little right-hand man for quite a while. But I do love working out in the yard, being outside, hearing the birds, trying to keep this beautiful place looking semi-good. So mostly I'm maintaining that right now, but I do enjoy that. I love being with family. I used to love traveling more than I do now. Grandpa and I were able to do quite a bit of traveling together, and so that's fun, although I am getting more and more, so I just enjoy being home or going and spending time with my kids. I like to read. Used to like to sing, but don't sing too much anymore with my croaky voice.
Do you think the present is better or worse than what it was like when you were younger?
Probably better and worse. The better side of it is I have been so blessed that I am very comfortable, have a comfortable situation. I think the worst is that the way our society is nowadays is what I consider worse than when I was growing up. There were more people who were wanting to do what was right, who were good to each other, and now there's a lot of anger and hatred and that type of thing surrounding us. I'm happy where I am and hope I can contribute to the good side of things.
What do you do for fun?
Be with my family. Is that any surprise? And doing those things I just talked about. Sewing and scrapbooking. I've done a lot of scrapbooking, which I've kind of slowed down on that now. Jean and I, my sister Jean, my twin sister Jean, we like to go out to Antelope Island just for a ride. It's close enough that we two old ladies can do this type of thing. But it's fun for us to be out in the country since we grew up in the country. And we like to look for antelope and find where the buffalo are. If we go through that little house down at the ranch out there, it reminds us so much of some of the homes we lived in when we were growing up, pioneer type houses. I think my kids look at me and think I lived in the olden days. So, those types of things.
Who do you trust and depend on?
My Heavenly Father. And maybe that isn't what people are looking for. And my amazing kids. That pretty well sums it up. I should just say ditto, ditto, ditto. Because it's always going to come back to my family.
Howard. I'm 12 years old. I live at Farmington, Utah, and I go to Farmington Junior High. And I like sports. I like basketball, and I love to ski and I like sports. And today is December 15th, 1983.
Where are you at?
We are St. George condo. It's our turn to be down here, and it's great.
So what have you been doing?
We've been playing racquetball, basketball, and doing swimming.
Did you swim a long time today?
We have 2 hours.
What's the weather like at home?
It's really cold and snowy. It's warm here. Great.
What's it like outside?
It's warm, sunny. I don't know.
Do you know any funny stories?
No.
Who's here with you?
Camille Cook and my family.
Okay, should we talk to Camille?
Sure.
Give a good smile for us. A good smile.
I'm Mike Howard. I'm 21 years old. We're down here at St. George, having a great time. So far we've played 2 games of basketball before Steve twisted his ankle, and I've read halfway through a book. I like to ski, I like to play basketball, and volleyball, just about any sport. Any other question?
What have you been doing while you've been down here?
Just basketball and reading books, that's all.
What happened to Steve today?
I already told you.
What did he do?
He twisted his ankle.
Is he happy about that?
No, he's not too excited about it.
Ruined his whole trip. Should we talk to Steve?
Yeah, I want you to talk to Steve.
Just a minute. Don't go away. I want to fade you out of here before we talk to Steve.
My name is Glen Howard. I live in Farmington, Utah. I'm down at St. George, not having a good time because we came down to play racquetball and to play basketball and to do all kinds of fun things, and I sprained my ankle, so I cannot do any of those fun things, so I'm just laying around moping. I wish I were up skiing instead. Like girls, like tennis, racquetball, basketball. Skiing's my favorite. Hunting, fishing, and girls.
Are you married yet?
No.
Any reason for that?
Yes. Because I like lots of, no. I don't know. Who knows the reasons. But, let's see, I like to eat, and, I like to shoot archery. I'm not an archery president. I play Army all the time.
What unit are you?
The best unit, the 328. What else?
Are you handsome?
Of course.
Yeah, the girls say you are. I wonder.
Let's see what else. Oh yeah. Go to school full time, the college, hoping to one day get a degree. And I have a pretty good family.
Is that it?
I think that's about it right now.
Am I on? My name's June Howard. I'm married to Glen Howard, who is the famous cameraman filming all of these shots. We're down at St. George, relaxing and having a good time, except for Steve, who's hurt his foot, and I feel bad for him because he's active and needs to be out running around using up some of his energy. But the weather's really neat. We've had sunshine, the grass is green, and then we think of the snow that's falling back home. It makes us kind of decided we want to stay down here. What else do you want me to say?
I understand you like to ski a lot.
I love it. My favorite sport. The only thing is I've got to learn how to do it.
What other sports do you like?
Oh, I don't mind. What do I like? Not really a sports enthusiast, but I've always wanted to learn how to play tennis.
She likes to watch basketball.
I like to watch the boys play basketball. And I went swimming for a while today and rode the exercycle for a while today and watched the girls. I guess the thing I enjoy doing is being with my family and doing things for them, making sure they got enough food to eat.
Very good.
So I don't know what else to say.
Go ahead.
My name is Glen Howard. We're down at Green Valley having a great time. We've been fishing and hunting elk, deer, moose, and we've been swimming and roller skating, none of which are true other than the swimming. But we are in our condominium and having a great time down here.
What do you like to do?
Beat my sons in racquetball, baseball, and basketball.
What else do you like to do?
I like to ski a lot. I usually beat them in skiing as well. Not quite as crazy on the skis as they are, but have a good time when they go.
Now, tell us what you do for a living.
I work very little, but what I do I enjoy doing. I teach up at Weber College. I'm a full professor. Some say a foolish professor, but I get to work with a lot of students and have a fun time.
Good.
You gonna keep recording?
Well, what else do you have to say?
I love my family. Got a sweet wife, sweet daughter, another sweet daughter, 3 great sons.
What do you like to do in Las Vegas?
Not a thing.
Is that all?
That's all I got to say.
And now, how do you do this?
Just hit the fade button in the way.
Is this
right
it?
there.
Is that it? Are you off?
No, you gotta hit the other one to turn it off because you're still recording.
Oh, this one?
Yeah. Gotta hit the fade button.
Well, I was born and raised up in Canada.
What's your name? Your full name?
My full name is Alice Alberta Wright Mom.
And how old are you now, Grandma?
I am 80. Well, I'm just a year behind the year. It's 83, so I'm 82.
So you're just a young whippersnapper then,
Yeah,
right?
just a young whippersnapper is all I am.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Canada,
Whereabouts?
in a little ward called Beazer, about 15, 20 miles from Cardston, up to right under Old Chief Mountain. If you've ever seen Chief Mountain, why, we've been all around it. When we were kids, we used to go up there and play all around Old Chief Mountain.
Where'd you go on your mission?
Went back to the Northern Indian Mission in Nebraska, Minnesota, and down among the Lamanite people. Had a really enjoyable time down there.
You went with Grandpa, right?
Yes, my husband and I went down, and President Kimball came out while we were down there, and we took him all over the mission, spent almost a week with him, taking him through the mission. And that was really a great experience to travel with President Kimball.
Do you have any advice for all your grandkids?
Well, I want my grandchildren to all grow up and go on missions too, so that they can have something to tell their children when they get older.
That sounds pretty nice.
I think it's a wonderful thing to have this opportunity, because my husband and I always wanted to go on missions, but our parents were always too poor to send us. So after we got grown up, my husband and the children all married off, my husband went to a stake president and asked him if we could go on a mission, and he says, "You old codgers," he says, "you're too old to go on a mission." So we moved out of that and went to another stake, and he wasn't there a month before they come and ask us who wouldn't like to go on a mission. My husband said, "I've always wanted to go on a mission ever since I was a young boy, and I never had a chance." And he says, well, you just go home and get your everything in order, see your children. And he says, when you get back, he says, you'll have a mission call. And we did.
Sounds like it was a great experience.
And when I said, well, open the letter. And I said, see where we're going. And so he opened it. And he said, it's right where I wanted to go. And I says, where? And he says, among the Lamanite people. And I said, oh, no. I said, they'll take their tomahawks and kill us. But he says, no. He says, we're going among the Lamanite people. And that's where we went.
That's great. Very good. I'm going to get Grandma Howard now.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you want to know about me? Where I was born,
Right.
where I was raised. Well,
Tell us about yourself.
I was born in American Fork, and I lived there 2 years before we moved to Salt Lake. And we lived right in the city. I played on the city and county building lawn. We walked to town until the 4th grade, and then we moved way out in the country, clear to 27th South. And I lived there till we got married, and then we did move out in the country to 48 South. We lived in the house all our married life until we come to Farmington. Now, what else do you want to know?
Who's your friend?
Who's my friend? Well, at holiday, I stay at home on holiday. All our friends were relatives. So I really didn't have really a close friend, except through grade school and that, and our friendship there continued on clear through high school, and then everybody went their own way, and that was the end of that. So my really close friend has been here in Farmington, and that's Florence Hess.
Very good.
And she is a super duper person. You don't have. You can tell her anything, you know what's going to stay there. She confides in me, and she says, boy, we're two of a kind. We believe the same things.
You want to tell us how old you are now?
No, I don't want to tell you how old I am. I'll tell you how old I am this year, but pretty soon it'll be another year.
Well, very
I'll
good.
soon be 72.
Well, that's young.
I'm trying to get dinner ready, and I don't look very glamorous. We're trying to hurry so we can go to Jeff's basketball game. We've been shopping all day long. We spent money we don't have. And my husband's trying to film us, and we're in a hurry. Is there anything else you want me to say?
What am I supposed to say? My name is Jeff Howard. We've had a really nice Christmas.
To the mountain.
Get a picture of the mountain.
Are you recording now?
Are you recording now? Alright. We've had a really nice
This
Christmas.
is Howard
I've already said
Purcell.
that.
Interviewing Jeff
Dallas is
Howard.
doing really well. And you can talk now, Dad.
Looking close up over there.
Get my Filipino shirt. Put down on my Filipino shirt. Mike was right here. I just can brag and need.
It'll sit down there by the fireplace in front of the fireplace.
See, we thought of stacking newspapers and things on it.
Yeah, just by the fireplace or put your feet on it.
Hey, what I'd do is
Cool
that I'd
looking
put it on the counter and use it for chopping block.
How'd you get the chainsaw to go all the way through that? Even
Not if you stay there.
It was pretty tough.
I bet, 'cause I
We
tried.
worked that night. We worked that whole night.
You guys were watching a football game. We were down there chewing that thing up.
No wonder you were cold.
Okay, it was freezing.
Okay, I'm Jolynn Howard Curtis. I just moved to Bountiful, Utah. I've been married for about 5.5 years to a wonderful man named Curtis Curtis. We have 3 boys, Isaac, Brandon, and Joshua. What should I say?
What do you like to do?
I like to ski. Gosh, that's about it, huh?
I understand you just moved into a new house. Is that true?
Yeah, we did. It's pretty fun. We like Bountiful. We like it a lot better than we did Salt Lake.
So have you moved in already?
No, we still have boxes all over the place. We're just trying to get settled.
That's good. So, you know we've got a picture of you when you were little?
Yes, I understand. It's right risque.
We'll probably show those when we show you.
Thanks a lot. As long as it's when I'm little, that's fine.
So what are you going to do now?
I don't know.
Let Curtis have a shot?
Yeah, it's his turn. I'm ready to go have some pumpkin pie.
He does.
Just on TV.
I thought Jolene looked really good on some of these.
Yeah.
I guess TV makes you look better, that's fine.
Tell us something about yourself, Kurt.
Well, it started off in the hospital.
You were actually in a hospital, huh?
Yeah, and my mom stuttered when, she tried to pronounce my name.
Gee.
I don't know what to say.
Did she have any children that lived?
Unfortunately not.
What do you like to do?
What do I like to do? I love basketball and watching football. Can't participate too much because I'm still a pretty small guy, I'm only about 20 years old,
Where do you work?
I work at Bailey's Moving and Storage, and I worked there for about 5 years.
Yeah, I understand you're one of the best basketball players there is.
Yeah, that's true. Danny Ainge and I used to play together a lot. I showed him how to play.
So you're probably interested in the game going on downstairs then, is that right?
That's right, I sort of forgot there's a second half.
Who's ahead?
Dallas is ahead 21-7.
Who do you want to beat?
I think I'd like to see Dallas win. They're pretty good.
Well, that sounds good. I guess we'll let you go back to the game.
Alright, thanks.
How about a wave?
Okay, I'm June Howard. I'm married to Glen Howard, who's doing all of the photographing of everyone and refuses to be in the picture himself. We're having Thanksgiving dinner today, 1983, and we're glad to have the Dynams and their family and Jolene and Curtis here with us. And we've just finished eating dinner, and it's hard to believe that the kids are saying they're starving and ready for pie. But I think in a minute we're going to have some pie. It's snowing outside, or at least it has been, and it's cold. But we're glad to be in a warm house and have our family and our friends with us.
I understand you just got a new ski outfit and put your husband deeply in debt.
Apparently I just put my husband deeply in debt. I can't believe I bought a ski outfit. Maybe I'll give it to Heather for Christmas.
What'd you buy?
I bought a pair of boots, which was all I was going to buy until they told me I had to have the bindings on the skis to fit the boots, and then I had to have the poles. So I ended up with skis, boots, poles, and bindings.
Did your husband ever tell you he loves you?
I think he did the day we got married. Yes, he did.
He could cut you right off the film, you know.
That's true, he could.
Well, when are we going to have pumpkin pie?
Right now.
Good. Ben. Someday there'll be houses all through here, but I thought this would be a good idea to have a shot of the old fault line. This is the old scarp right here that dropped when the fault occurred. Everybody?
Struggling to grow here.
Here, Gwen, quick, here she is.
Hi. I don't know what to say. No, okay. We're in beautiful St. George in Snow Canyon, enjoying the scenery, and just having a good time. No pressure, no hype. Oh, I'll say something. We're enjoying the beautiful monolithic wonders of the splendid land that we live in.
How'd the pictures of the mountains turn out?
Beautiful. Super shot.
You get that one?
Fantastic. You guys are probably the best players around.
No! Okay. Follow up. What's that? Pick up? Hold up.
Today is October 24th, and my name is Heather Howard, and we are going to a Halloween party and a dance. And we sprayed our hair pink and purple, and it's, I don't know, it's weird, and I'm dressed up to be a punker. And Marianne is carrying...
Howard is under construction
Of the Howard estate.
of the estate that he's developing here on the sunny beaches.
I swear.
We're not sure what he's making yet, but he's been noted in the national scientific journals for his creation.
Yeah. Right.
I believe those are old pop cans right by him there.
No.
Obviously he has a use for them in the part of that
Highly
development.
technical construction equipment.
Do you want to tell us any more about what you're doing?
Nope, you'll just have to wait and tune in tomorrow.
What will it be?
Only time will tell.
Will it have meaning for nations?
No. Just meaning for me.
Heather and Shauna's fighting over the cookies.
Well, we'll have to wait and see what this turns out to be.
Church organization received in April of 1830.
Doing?
June? That's
Oh,
good.
don't take a picture. I look awful.
You look great.
I look like I've been camping out. What are you doing, Mike? Don't care. I just said, Dad, don't take my picture.
We're now looking at the tops of the Himalayan mountains. We're at 30,000 feet in United Airlines, passing over this beautiful country. You can see the homes and other things down in the Rocky Mountains.
Mike,
What? Help!
look at Angie.
Where do you think you're going?
Steve,
What?
your woman's getting in trouble.
Go get her. I can't talk her into coming this way.
Gotta get Angie over there in that crevice.
Angie, come on!
She's halfway up the mountain.
I was going to say,
Shauna's got good colors on for pictures. She's rainbow. And look,
do that again. That sounds like a prehistoric monster.
Looks like one too.
that does sound like one.
It is one. Good shot. Now look at the camera. Talk to us.
What?
Into X-rated movies.
Hi.
You have to talk to my producer before you can publish that, you know.
No problem. We have all the rights. Heather, you gonna say something? What are you guys eating anyway?
We're getting our nutrition for the day.
Good, I'll have some. Mike.
Oh! Go!
Quit! Ah!
Ah!
You can't get it
That's up for both!
Can you get up in that?
Gotta hit it more than that. Hit it! I don't know how he got up without being so kooky. Oh, he was gonna be one piece of ice. Way to go! Oh, that's right, I gotta stay here by hand. I kept running down the beach. Too bad it started doing this. Looks good. Are you getting him? Good one, Steve. Really good. Yay! Get your paddle or your thing. This time. Yeah, it's going to be 2 or
Let me
tell
later.
you about my experience. But you see, we had many problems. It was very tough, but due to my skill in water skiing, it was just wonderful.
Beach again.
Oh, you're now going to see a panoramic view of Good Hope Bay in Lake Powell, Utah.
What's that you have on your head?
As you'll notice, all of us are required now to wear these pro bass hats that are furnished to us when we start our trip down here. That helps catch the fish.
Why haven't you caught any up till now then?
I threw my hat in. Nick's been the only one that's wearing his hat. I'm narrated.
We're down at Lake Powell. Jeff and I just arrived. The folks that are here haven't caught anything, but that's not atypical. They never do. Usually they're trying to catch whatever scenery's around. This is the first clear day they've had. So they've had nothing but terrible weather since we sent them on their way. But since we've come, the weather's exceptional. Of course, we planned it that way so we'd have a good time. We're now in the process of preparing a turkey,
Dinner.
Lloyd? Deep fry.
This picture's getting
Turkey pit. We're going to cook the turkey, and the fire's been made, and we're getting ready to take care of that now. That's all I'm going to say. The snow will be here so we can go skiing.
Can I get a shot of your t-shirt if I go down?
What?
Can I get a shot of your t-shirt on? Okay.
This is my t-shirt I got for Christmas.
The Ski Utah powder. Okay.
Now all I gotta do is turn it off.
How do I turn it off?
Hit the same button.